Give her a proper. It is my pleasure to introduce Sara Wolfe Vaughan, a hybrid writer who explores the boundaries between all genres of writing. Her work can be found, oh boy, I forgot to ask how to spell this, Grimoire?
Yep, you got it.
Grimoire, okay. Persona, Threshold, and the Air magazine. She is the former fiction editor of Sonora Review and previously served as the president on the board of directors at Casa Libre, an arts letters nonprofit in Tucson, Arizona, that provided a platform for emerging female and LGBTQIA artists. She holds her MFA in fiction from the University of Arizona, and her master's degree, thesis, It Isn't Just Me, can be found at the U of A Poetry Center. She is currently working on post-apocalyptic. I always get that one this time. Apocalyptic novella, tentatively titled Three Endings, All Beginnings. So let's give Sara a warm AZ Wordsmith.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Sara. Let me get comfy. I'll fix the mic. Down there. Thank you. How's that?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, awesome. So hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see so many people here. And I wanted to say a special thank you to AZ Wordsmiths for bringing us together every month. It's been a really great place for me to find community since I moved back here to my hometown, so appreciate that. Tonight, like Lee said, I'll be reading excerpts from my novella. It's composed of interconnected short stories. For a little context, it's actually post-apocalyptic, so there have been multiple apocalypses, not just one, that these characters in this world have experienced. So there's two settings that we kind of go between. There's a valley known as Gray Valley that's inhabited by the descendants of survivors from the first and second catastrophes. And there's a kind of Mad Max style desert wasteland outside of that valley with its own unique band of survivors. All right, so this first piece is called Lara and Aaron. Once upon a past and future time, a boy loved a girl and she loved him just the same. They spent their days exploring the fields and forests of Gray Valley. Unlike other children, they knew their love before a bond was arranged or pledged in the flowering season, and the first families smiled up at them from their place in the earth. And when in the girl's 14th turn, the blood came to her, all agreed that she would be bound to the boy. The braiding ceremony took place in the valley center with two other young couples after the girl's 15th turning. Despite the blessings upon them, they longed for more than the space they were given. They ached for wings to carry them over the mountains and into the wide, empty world. They formed a plan. The boy and the girl gathered supplies and stowed them in secret places, inside the hollow of an ancient juniper, underneath bedroom floorboards, and among cords of firewood. They dreamed day and night of crossing over the mountains, down into the wasteland and beyond. They promised each other the edge of the world. They believed that as long as they stayed together, the wasteland could be a bountiful place. A turn after their braiding ceremony, the girl and boy remained childless. On the morning of their leaving, the three heads summoned the boy to the underground temple. He told her to take the wagon and leave, that he would soon follow. The girl made camp at the top of the mountain and waited. The sun set, and the boy remained unseen. The sun rose the next morning, and every morning after, until much time had passed without him. So the girl took the wagon down the other side of the mountain. Where the mountain met the wasteland, she found a gathering of people and other creatures. Eyes watched her from behind plastic shields and gauzy coverings. Off to the sunrise side, she could see great pillars of smoke and hear terrible noises. A place of slaughtering, fuel vats, and fire, a voice said, from under a dust-colored tarpaulin, a child wearing a crown of devil's claw. You carry a child, the child said. In the next 8 cycles, he will arrive. And my boy, the girl asked, what of him? Gutted, gone, said the child. Back on the mountaintop, the girl made a bed under the cover of harvested deadfall. She hunted the animals of the forest. She waited while her baby grew, and her boy did not return. The baby arrived on a morning full of dew and sunshine. She named him Leaf, and she felt love again. She formed a plan. She gathered supplies and traded them with the people of the wasteland, animal hides, evening berries, and honey. She dreamed day and night of continuing her journey with her baby boy. She promised him the edge of the world. She believed that as long as they stayed together, the wasteland would be a bountiful place. Awesome. All right, so this next... Thank you. So this next story is greatly abridged, but for our purposes here, but it takes place chronologically after the one that I just read. So we'll see a teenage Leaf and his mother, now named Peddler, as they arrive at the base of the mountain in the desert outside of Great Valley. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Angela Carter, The Bloody Chamber. If any of you have read her work, this is very deeply inspired by her and her fairy tale-esque style. So I'll throw that out there. All right, so this one is called Leaf and Peddler. Began by trading 3 deerskins for a real metal shovel with an ironwood handle. In the valley, the shovel would translate into a small sack of flour, a month of beeswax candles, or a handful of nails. The next 4 camps came up with nothing but half a jar of split and jagged beans atop an inch-thick layer of dirt. At the last camp, a man wearing a long animal skull over his face let them in past a low wire fence. All around the yard rested the carcasses of machines from the first ending. In the center rose a great hill of tangled metal, bones, fabric, and rope, the nest of some awful bird, if Leaf had not known better. There was no obvious door, and so it was as if Sigmund, a man as tall and thin as the skeletal trees that dotted the horizon, materialized out of the heap itself. He carried a shallow, grease-stained box in his hands and looked down at them. A shield of clear yellow plastic covered his sun-stained face and obscured what Leaf knew to be 2 enormous black eyes. Around his neck, Sigmund wore a circle of devil's claw. Here they are, Sigmund breathed, every word sounding like a sigh.
Okay.
He pulled back a thin sheet of packing foam to reveal orange, palm-sized orbs nested against one another in the box. Sorry.
Oh, I lost it. You want to go back?
Yeah, I can go back. Thank you. Okay. All right, here they are, Sigmund breathed, every word sounding like a sigh. He pulled back a thin sheet of packing foam to reveal orange, palm-sized orbs nested against one another in the box, clementines. His mother picked one up, rolled it around in her hand. A little soft, overripe. Leaf pulled his scarf tighter around his face in a futile effort to block out the smells from the fuel refining baths just outside of Sigmund's main compound. One could learn to ignore animal screams, let them blend into the sound of roaring engines and sputtering turbines, but the smell of mortifying and burning flesh was unforgiving. The moment you thought you couldn't smell it anymore, it would take over your senses like the smoke from a hank of hair held to a flame. The drivers can't control the movement of the winds, Sigmund hissed. Leaf rested a hand on the hilt of the knife at his hip, thankful that his scarf hid his look of disdain. Sigmund was one to roar around the roadway stop, forcing others to bend to his will, and bend they did. It was he who controlled the refining of flesh into fuel for the first ending's burning engines, the fuel that brought the big rigs to the roadway stop. I take shoddy goods and you take 5 fewer hides next cycle, his mother spat. Fine, Peddler, Sigmund barked. Sigmund had tried to kill her once, not long after Leaf was born, thinking it would be easy to break her body for fuel and claim her possessions for his own. His mother had gutted the thin man in return for his efforts. Leaf tossed a bundle of tanned deer hides in the dust at Sigmund's feet. Through Sigmund's thin shirt, an amalgamation of netting and canvas, Leaf could see the jagged scar running horizontally across the pale stomach, a white line through a thin layer of blonde fur. It was that scar that kept Sigmund and Peddler dealing through gritted teeth, a temporary respect between 2 predators. His mother scooped the little box against her hip and handed Leaf one of the fruits. It was warm from her palm. Always say what you want right away, make the deal clear, she said quietly as they turned from Sigmund and walked back to the caravan. Dried herbs and bones, sorry, there should have been a better pause there. Dried herbs and bones swung back and forth above him as his mother drove the horses back to the mountaintop camp, their home between the valley and the desert wasteland. The smell of dried flowers, hay, and wet earth promised to cover him in a blanket of sleep as he lay on his back. This was his life, this endlessly rocking caravan that measured the days between trading trips to the valley and the roadway stop, all the days measured by the caravan's pendulum. When he woke, the light through the slats was gone, replaced by cool blue lines. They had crossed over the mountain's crest and were almost home. His fingers still smelled of the sticky fruit and the white skin he had peeled to reveal the clementine's juicy interior. The flavor was sour, making him suck his teeth afterward, while he tucked the seeds and the rind into a small glass jar to dry. The seeds would trade back to the roadway drivers, the rind to people in Great Valley. Every part has its use, his mother would say. Outside of the caravan, the trees trembled, their golden leaves flickering in the twilight, whispering under the soft sounds of the horses grazing near the deer pen. He set to his chores, beginning by checking their stock in the caravan. The shovel made up for the slow trade day, and the clementines were always a worthwhile acquisition, yet they were running lower and lower on skins, their traps often empty. After a dinner of raw grasses and boiled hedge hens, his mother sat on the smooth wooden bench behind where he sat amongst the pine needles. She pulled his long black hair together at the top of his head and began to braid. "What did you think of the clementine?" she asked. "Good, kind of sour and sweet at once." "A beautiful name for a perishable thing," she said, just above a whisper. "Could we grow them here?" "Not without a sun house." In the valley, there were strange white domes that kept the more delicate plants alive throughout the winter. Some said the sun houses came from the underground temple with the first families, and they were old, their walls brittle to the touch. Mara, a valley girl that Leif thought he might care for, worked in the sun houses with her family. In 3 seasons, she would be promised to a valley man, and a year after that, she would be joined to that same man in a braiding ceremony. "Could I have another?" he asked. His mother undid a braid, ran her fingers through the strands, and then began the braid again. "There isn't much time left for pleasure before the dying season," she said to herself, and then, "Why not? Yes, take another." After a mug of hot water splashed with honey wine, they crawled into their lean-to and each nestled into their own jumble of furs to sleep. Before the dying season, Leif would need to repair the shelter. It was never meant to be a permanent dwelling, but every year they stayed in their camp, and every year they had to repair it. Since before he could remember, his mother had talked of trading up for a truck and leaving everything to find what there was to find on the wasteland roadway. But he had stopped believing that they would leave a long time ago. Instead, he imagined what it would be like if Mara could leave the valley and come to live in their camp. She would love the horses. On warm days, they could ride together, her arms around his waist, to the looking pool on the other side of the mountain. They would drink cool water right from the spring and eat handfuls of evening berries. In the grass, they would explore each other with red-stained fingers and mouths until the sun went down. The next morning, when they were nearly to the valley floor, they came to the Gray Gate, a rusted barrier of 4 metal bars lacking a fence on either side. A valley guardian stepped out of the little shack beside it, a sharpened stick held across his chest. "Morning, John," his mother said from her seat atop the caravan. "You're earlier than usual," John said, prodding the butt of his spear into the earth. "Thought we'd get a head start, already thinking about the dying season, I guess." She was always trying to be friendly with the guardian at the Gray Gate. Although Leif and her knew many different ways into the valley, this road was the only way through for the caravan. Dwellers at the roadway stop were highly superstitious when it came to valley people, and the valley people held a special disdain for what they believed to be the heathens of the wasteland. Leif and his mother belonged to neither community and held a tenuous agreement between both sides. The valley center was a more comfortable place than the wasteland's trading circle. The shade kept them cool and there was no need to wear scarves or protective eyewear. A field of ankle-high green grass housed a natural spring in a great stone circle. On one side of the spring was the entrance to the underground temple, the origin place of the valley people. On the other side, an apple orchard stretched back toward the mountain. At the orchard's edge, they opened the caravan and set up their wares, maintaining a respectful distance from the perpetually open door of the temple. The door was taller than the caravan, round and made of a metal unfamiliar to Leif. If he got close enough, he could feel a cool draft of air blowing from the shadowed entrance. The shovel went quickly to a temple leader who came to do business for the 3 heads, who avoided being anywhere near them. One of many small reminders that they were never truly welcome. Other valley residents came and went, arriving steadily with the climbing temperature. When business began to lull, Leif left the displays and his mother and went to the horses. He unhooked his mare and her along the orchard path to graze on the stray patches of grass. "Leif," a familiar voice called to him from further in the orchard. It was Mara. She wore a frock of the lightest blue he'd ever seen, and her long brown hair was pulled back in an intricate braid. He smiled. "You're daydreaming out here instead of helping your mother? Shame on you," she grinned. "My mother can handle herself." "We all know that," she laughed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, don't get sore. She's tough, not like anyone else I've met. Capable." "By tough, you mean stubborn and inscrutable," Leif grinned. Mara came closer and stroked the horse's neck. Mother nearly died over those clementines you got. I think she may trade everything we own for that little box of treats. That would be all right. He reached into the leather pouch at his waist and retrieved a clementine. I thought you might want one for yourself. She took it from his outstretched hand. Thank you so much. Mother's awful stingy about sharing, unless it's with visitors, of course. She held it over her heart in a fist. Mara leaned against the mare and tilted her head to the side. Leif could no longer stand the space between them. One step forward and his lips found hers. She tensed and then softened under his hands as they found her shoulders, the back of her neck. Leif, his mother's voice. Leif, delivery. Yes, he called over his shoulder and then looked to Mara. Tonight? She smiled with a nod and headed back into the orchard. He took a deep breath and led his mare back to the valley center. If his mother had seen him and Mara, she wasn't showing it. She had warned him once half-heartedly to keep his eyes off the valley's girls, but she followed it up with a thoughtful smirk and shake of her head before going into one of her many stories about his father. That night in the moonlight, there was only them. A bed of long grass and the spring running away deeper into the valley. The ability of one body to make another feel so many things, so far from pain, bewildered him. When Mara cried, her tears falling hot on his chest, he held her and kissed her hair and made many promises that they both knew he could never keep. An orange glow through the treetops meant morning was near. He left Mara before she awoke, as he always did. The days in between their meetings left him wondering if she was even real, but every time he came to the valley center, she was there. He rode through the woods as he had many times, silent and careful. Despite the cold air, he still felt warm. He stopped and listened. He heard nothing but the breathing of his horse and the creep of night creatures. And then he smelled smoke, like from a campfire, but not quite right. The fire in their camp should have been too low by then to send smoke his way. He heeled his horse forward into a gallop. At the edge of their camp, he pulled to a rearing stop. The campfire raged, and in it he could see the beams of their shelter, the reaching of a horse's rib cage, the caravan, the horse, and the deer in their pen, his mother, all gone. He searched the woods and the camp until he passed out from exhaustion by the fire. When he awoke, there were only cold ashes and charred suggestions of things he had once held dear. He sifted frantically through the ashes to find any sign of his mother, but there was nothing. He sat up, wiped the hair from his face with blackened hands, and the guilt rushed in. If he had been there, he could have saved her and the horses and everything. In the early evening, he found the rind of a clementine in the dirt near the road, and he spurred his horse into the growing dark over the mountain and toward the wasteland.